But also, if you don't, the law has, and you move around here, say you move in with each other, you start cohabiting, you sire children, you call each other on Facebook, Mr. and Mrs., or put yourself out to society as a married couple.
You have YouTube channels together.
Yeah, you have YouTube channels together where you invite us into your life and your hope. Like, you have to realize that the law has something called a presumption of marriage, where one party can move to court and say, presume this person as married to be based on the following things. We've lived together for X period of time. We've had 5 children, where she sets herself out as my spouse. And the only reason people move to courts to presume a marriage is because in Kenya, you can only distribute matrimonial property after you've been granted a divorce. So the court papers filed in court usually are presume the marriage, then declare divorce, then now we move to the court for let's go and divide this matrimonial property. So I guess the mistake there as you're dating is realizing the legal consequences of whatever relationship you're in.
So wait. Yeah. So if I'm dating and I thought Kamwi stays were
abolished.
What are these premises that I can take to court and say, wait, that's actually my wife, or that's actually my husband, or that's actually my spouse, whether we had the wedding or not.
Yeah.
What makes me have the right to presume a marriage?
Again, shockingly, we have gone so far with this situation that the Supreme Court has pronounced itself on that specific question you've asked, like, what are the parameters of us presuming a marriage? So first I want to say, let me just backtrack so that I don't lose anyone. First of all, and in Kenya, under the Marriage Act, the existing Marriage Act, there are 5 types of marriages that are recognized, which is Muslim, Hindu, Christian, civil, and then customary.
Okay.
So other than Christian, civil, and Hindu, the other 2, Muslim and customary, are potentially polygamous, meaning a man can marry multiple wives.
Okay.
So if you're choosing to marry under those regimes, that person has the right to go and contract a subsequent marriage. That's number 1. But before even we get to marriage, let's consider the dating couple. So if there's a couple that has not moved forward and solidified their marriage into a marriage, and let me mention here that if you don't have a marriage certificate under Kenyan law, you're not married. So if there's a couple that has gone on to do the rest of the things, live together, sire children, call each other Mr. and Mrs. on Facebook and YouTube, one of those parties retains a right to move under common law, to move to a court and say, presume as married.
And then the certificate.
Yes. And then so the courts have said, so in this matter, again, that went all the way to the Supreme Court, because in the lower court, so this matter is funny. Let me just give you the back.
Please give us. This is so interesting.
I laughed over this matter. In this matter, it's important. I'm not being tribal, but it's important to know the tribes of the parties. The man was Kisi, the lady was Kikuyu.
Okay.
So the man moved the lower court, which is where you presume a marriage, based on the following. We've lived together, we sire children, we've lived in this home together, The woman came back and said, me, actually, yes, we've lived together and we've had these children, yes, but me, I was never married to this person. In fact, me, I was married to person Y, who died in 2011. And this other person, I just called him to come and maintain the homes and properties I used to have. And now he wants to make claim to those homes. He was never my husband. The High Court agreed with this person and then and said, by the way, you are never married. This woman never had capacity to contract a marriage. So whatever long-term relationship of living together you had does not amount to a marriage, because the woman provided her marriage certificate to the deceased who had died in 2011, but they had started living together with this other man, I think, in like 2008. So this man, aggrieved by that High Court's decision, moves to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal disagrees with the High Court and said, no, in fact, everything we are seeing is proof that a marriage existed. There is a marriage. So this woman again goes to the Supreme Court. Initially, in the first instance, she doesn't get certification, but eventually the Supreme Court says she raises issues of public importance, bring the matter to the Supreme Court. So she goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court overturns the Court of Appeal's decision and agrees with the High Court that this woman never had capacity to marry because she was still in another relationship, in another marriage. Doesn't matter, this person died. So this person, the man, is denied the opportunity to share in the matrimonial property. In fact, now, the reason I had said that tribes, the woman argues in her case and says, in fact, me, I was married to another Kikuyu man. I think the man says that the only reason this property was registered in her name, the subsequent property, is because the person who was selling us that property was a Kikuyu who refused to sell to a non-Kikuyu. So this property ended up in her name circumstantially. Ideally, should have been ours. Either way, when we went to the Supreme Court was like, all of those are stories. The point of the matter is, did this woman have capacity to marry? No. Is this a matrimonial property dispute? If there was no underlying marriage, this cannot be a matrimonial property dispute. And over and above that, now the question I was telling you, do we consider who shall be given this property, or do we consider who bought this property? So that are some of the things that the Supreme Court brought up. But the Supreme Court went on to say, which is very important, that as much as you have a right under common law to come and request for a marriage to be presumed, the following things need to be proved. The parties must have lived together for a long time. A long time, yeah. So it doesn't qualify long time. We have cases where 5 years was found to be a long time, 20 years was found not to be a long time. So as I said, very discretionary on courts.
Case by case.
Case by case. And then the parties must have legal right or capacity to marry, meaning if I'm already married with a marriage certificate under Christian law, I have no capacity to marry somebody else, yeah? And here let me make the caution that the position is different if the man dies, because the Law of Succession Act provides a different scenario. Then number 3, the parties must have intended to marry, which is what I was asking about consensus ad idem. There must be consent by both parties. The parties must have held themselves out to the outside world as being a married couple, the YouTube channels. The onus of proving presumption is on the party who alleges it. You who's alleging you're married to someone, prove it. And then the evidence to rebut the presumption has to be strong, distinct, satisfactory, and conclusive. And the standard of proof is on a balance of probabilities. That just means they don't need absolute truth. They just need, when we weigh these two cases, which one looks like more believable. Yeah, you understand? So based on stuff like that, we now have people who sign cohabitation agreements. We're long-term dating. You're living in my house. We've even maybe decided to adopt a child together, or to actually sire a child together. Let us make it very clear to us and to any future courts that we were never married. So what do? We sign a cohabitation agreement. Mostly in the UK, they sign cohabitation agreements. Here in Kenya, we have people who sign life partnership deeds. Yeah, and I think in South Africa, they even have a provision for that law where we agree we're only life partners, we're not spouses. Yeah. So now what we're seeing is people come into our boardrooms and say, let's draft that life partnership deed. Let us now know our rights under that deed. So what that means is that if you ever wake up to claim I was your spouse, I'll just provide that deed and prove that I was never your spouse. This is not a presumption of marriage. You never acquired any rights in matrimonial property or succession or all the other legal consequences that are causes to ensue.
So what does a
what
does it
a cohabitation agreement or a lifetime life partnership deed? So basically, ideally, it's just a contract saying we're not married people. We're choosing to act the following way. It's like an extra. So these days, there's beyond the marriage relationship, and this is what we're talking about at the dating level. Beyond the marriage, because people can be dating like forever, for 10 years, for 5 years, for 15 years. Beyond the marriage relationship, especially if we don't intend to marry, I don't want to materialize a risk where you ask a court to presume me your spouse. Because if I'm presumed your spouse, you gain a proprietary interest or some sort of beneficial interest to say, my property in matrimonial property rights, you gain an interest in succession rights. I might even be imposed on certain rights with regards to parental responsibility. So to eliminate that risk, what do? I make it very clear by writing a deed that, by the way, this is not a marriage. This is a companionship where we have agreed on the following things. You can live in my house. If I die, you will move out 6 months after I die. I will continue to give you my credit card under your name, but it is voluntarily being done out of the goodness of my heart, so that you cannot wake up and say that a claim in alimony, because I used to give you a credit card with a limit of 500,000 every month. Now you compel me to keep giving that when I decide to exit this relationship. So it's an evolution of how relationships are evolving because of what we've seen. Because you've seen someone like that moving all the way to the Supreme Court to say, declare me a spouse, and then after you declare me a spouse, distribute this property half to me. So that's the only way to now guard you against self, against the law, which goes back to my point. Marriage is both social and legal.
As you're dating, have a lawyer, guys. Have a lawyer.
Yeah, especially if you're going to have joint assets like a YouTube channel is still an income generating asset.
Are you listening, YouTubers? Please say that again. Say it to that camera.
So what I'm saying is, as you're dating or as whatever relationships you're in, if you're going to make joint investments, like consider what that is. I know a lot of people don't sometimes consider a YouTube channel as an investment, but it is an income generating asset on both your portfolios. So if we don't have a contract that states that if we don't stop agreeing with each other who owns the brand rights, whether I'll get paid royalties as one party continues, you might just walk away. And I think in Kenya, we've already seen a few people fall into that scenario. So understand, as you're putting your time and effort and so much today to bring up this podcast with your spouse or whoever it is, your life partner, or whoever it is, do you know how you would acquire the rights to that if this relationship went south?